Hi guys, welcome to Child Life Diaries. I'm Bria. I am a student in Chicago getting my master's in child development with a concentration in child life. This is my third episode of the Child Life Diaries, and in this one I'm going to talk about tips and tricks that I used while going through the internship interview process that helped me land an internship in my first round of applying. Kind of hard to do for a number of reasons, so just going to talk about what I did, what I would do differently, how I felt during the process, and hopefully I can help some of you have a good shot at getting an internship. So let's just hop right into it. I want to start off by saying that it is incredibly difficult, no matter how prepared you are, to get an internship because there is a limited amount of spots available while there are hundreds of students who are applying. I know Rush Hospital in Chicago specifically had one spot for internship that they were offering, and for this fall 2025 cycle, they received 120 applications. So having to dwindle down from 120 to just one student who gets offered that spot is incredibly difficult, and it's hard to not beat yourself down while going through this process if you are applying more than one round, which most people are. If you are applying and you're not getting interviews or you're not getting offers, it's easy to kind of think, oh, I'm not doing good and I'm not prepared or this, that, or the other, when the reality is there's so many people who are prepared, and it's so hard for sites to choose what applicant is going to be best for their area. So giving these interview tips and tricks, it's not going to guarantee that you're getting an offer just because there's not that many spots available. So these tips and tricks are to help you stand out more and to help you let your knowledge shine and to help you maybe stand apart from others. But this is not a foolproof. Don't come back to this video and say, Bria, I followed everything you said and I didn't get an offer, because I can't make it so that you get an offer. And I wish that it was easier, and I wish that there were more internships available, but that's just not where we are right now. It's just a very highly competitive field to get into. It's really hard to get the internship, but I'm hoping that at least I can help some of you feel more confident in your ability to land an internship and get an offer. My first few tips are kind of general and just saying that if you're doing a virtual interview, which most of the interviews are, you need to be in a place that's not like where I'm at right now. You don't want the background to be so busy. Even though I have it blurred, it's still very much, you can see that there's stuff going on my bed, the curtains are over there, whatever, and it's not just one color in the background. When I did my interview, I made sure that I was sitting in a place that was just blank wall behind me. There was nothing going on, so that you're focused on me. You also want to make sure that you have good lighting. Right now, I'm sitting in front of a ring light, but if I were wearing my glasses, I wouldn't want to do that just because there's the circles that will show up on my glasses, and that's just like kind of distracting. You're not really making fully eye contact if you're on the other end and you're looking, you can't see the irises. So you want to make sure that you have good lighting, you're very well lit. I wouldn't wear a t-shirt like I'm wearing right now. Even though I love my me t-shirt, I wouldn't wear that during an interview. You're kind of dressing business casual. I wore a mock neck white shirt and I had a cardigan over it because it was a tank top and I didn't want to wear a tank top. That was not as professional as they're looking for. So you want to wear something pretty casual. I did some group interviews for one of the sites, and I would see some of the other applicants as well, and they were all dressed the same way with business casual. Somebody had a blazer on, somebody was wearing just a polo, somebody had on a turtleneck like I did, but it's all very plain, very profesh, which I'm not a very professional person in general, but for these interviews, you do want to just look clean, and it doesn't have to be, super professional. It's business casual is what they call it. But if you just have a plain shirt that looks nice and is not, there's no graphic design on it, there's even like having a logo, having a words, you might not want to have that. You want to just be very plain with it. That's important. I also suggest having a glass of water, just because for me specifically, I get so nervous when I'm talking, and I also just talk so much and I like barely breathe, and I'm just not thinking about myself when I'm doing this. So I needed a glass of water with me or a cup of tea with me, just because my mouth was just getting really dry and it was making me trip over my words. I realized when I did my mock interviews. And so I always had a cup of something that I could sip on with me. Also, it helps me like self-regulate myself, and I'm like taking a deep breath, taking a drink, helping myself stay calm during the situation in case I'm getting a little too nervous during the interview. So I think that having a cup of water is really a lifesaver sometimes. So, past the general suggestions, I think that doing mock interviews is very important because I did two different types of mock interviews. And for each one, I got to sit down, I got to answer questions, but I did them different. Where the first mock interview I did, it was the way that they asked a question, I answered the question as if I were in an actual interview. And then we immediately debriefed over that question. So I was able to just hear what my mentor had to say about my answer and kind of work in her tips into my next question as we went on. So I did that first interview, and we probably did 10 questions, just ask, answer, debrief afterwards. And I really liked that because, especially since this was a teacher that I had in school, and it was like I knew this person, and it didn't make me feel like I was in an interview because of that relationship that we already had. So I liked being able to go back and forth and just kind of talk it out. Even though, like I said in the beginning, I was like, oh, it's just gonna be very casual. And then I answered each question as if I was actually in an interview because that's just where my brain went. But it was nice having that more laid back style so that I can just practice what I was gonna say and get immediate feedback about how I should change what I'm saying. And then in the second mock interview, it was with a specialist that I hadn't met before, but who was also, they worked with the teacher mentor that I already had and who I did my first interview with. So this mock interview, we went straight through. Like in the beginning, kind of like debriefed on or pre-briefed on what we wanted to do. And I said that I wanted this one to be like a true interview. So for the second mock interview, I was able to think about what I had already heard from the first one and just go straight through the questions. So she asked the questions, I answered it. She acted like it was a real interview. And then in the end, we debriefed and we went over each question. So it was probably also around 10 questions, but this time we just went straight through and I was able to just practice how I was going to carry myself, how I was going to answer the questions, and then get the feedback at the end. And for me, I got the same feedback from both of those mock interviews because I had about a week or two in between the two interviews, and I just wasn't able to incorporate into my answers what I had been told yet. So it was nice being able to have those mock interviews and get the same feedback from each person, knowing that this is absolutely something that I need to work on before getting into my real interviews. So that's really important, I think, is having mock interviews if you can. And if you can't do a mock interview, I think that it would be helpful for you to record yourself answering the question. So if you have a list of questions and you just record yourself answering the question as if you were in an interview, and then watch that back yourself and see like if there's something you think you should change, or you can ask a peer if you have one, or you can go online and ask. You can ask me if you have questions. I will absolutely help if you wanted to mock interview with me, I guess. The next thing that I think is very helpful is having cheat sheets. Now, these cheat sheets aren't very comprehensive because when you're in an interview, you don't want to be just looking down over and over again, and I feel like that kind of like disrupts the flow of the interview. But if you're having a cheat sheet, like what I had is I had two separate cheat sheets, and one of them was majorly just like things about development that would spark my memory of what I already know about development, just because sometimes it's hard to focus when in an interview for me where they're asking the question and I'm just scatterbrained. It's the ADHD. It goes everywhere. So if they ask the question and I'm able to just glance down and see pre-operational and I see like one or two words about pre-operational stage, or even just like looking down, seeing the age range. If they say you have a 2-year and I look down, I see 2 is in pre-operational, being able to just glance at that and see can help kickstart what you already know about development, because you should already know these things going into the interview, but it's really nice to have a cheat sheet to just help you stay on track and to help you gather your thoughts. So I had stuff about development, like I had Piaget on there, I had Erickson, I had Vygotsky, I think I had some Greenspan and Bowlby. I just had a bunch of random stuff like that. I had Maslow's hierarchy of needs on a different sheet. I had Broff and Runner on that sheet. I had, what did I have? I think I had something about grief on the sheet. I don't even remember everything that I had on there. Excuse me. But Everything that I knew I would just need to kickstart, everything that I thought that would be helpful for me, I put on that cheat sheet where I knew I could glance at it very quickly and see what I needed to see and then look back up and be good. It's also nice if you have monitors. Like where I'm sitting right now, I have a monitor on either side of the camera. So if you could like tape up the sheet so you're not even looking down, you're just kind of glancing to the side, or if you have, you can do split screen on your laptop. I just think having a cheat sheet in some way or form is just very helpful for having you gather your thoughts. I also had on the cheat sheet a couple of my examples, because that's another tip, is always have examples ready. I tried to have 2 examples for each age range. That way, if they're asking me, give me a time that you interacted with children in Erickson's industry versus inferiority stage of development. And I would have just written down on my cheat sheet, camp, 10 to 11, or preschool, 3 to 4, or something like that. Like I just had like little again keywords and age range of what the examples I wanted to use were. That way I wasn't like stuck thinking about it, because I didn't want to be given an age range and then have, you have so many different interactions that happen while you are volunteering, while you're working, while you're in school, that you don't want to have to shuffle through all of those interactions to find the best one in the moment. So having those examples on hand and practicing what you're going to say about that before you have the interview is very helpful, because it helps you feel more prepared and it helps you look more prepared as well. The next tip is always thinking about developmental language. This is the thing that I was given a tip on for both of my mock interviews, because I would very clearly be talking about the correct age range, or I would very clearly be talking about the correct stage of development, but I would never actually say the stage of development. I would never use the developmental language. And that was the hard thing, is that you don't want to go into this, even though you're talking to a CCLS and you know that they know what you're talking about. You want to go into this as if they don't know. You don't ever want to assume that they know what you're talking about, and you want to make sure that you are explicitly using those language keywords. So if I'm talking about a 10 and 11-year-old and they're just like, tell me a time you worked with a 10-year-old, I'm not going to, I was just saying, oh, I was working with this 10-year-old and, he was having hard time fitting in and he was feeling inferior and da 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 da. But what I needed to do past my mock interview and what I learned was that I wanted to say, oh, I was working with this 10-year-old. We were in a camp setting and he's in the stage of Erickson's inferiority versus industry. So I knew that he was worried about fitting in with his peers and worried about, feeling like he was useful to the group and da 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 da. So you want to specifically say those keywords and use that developmental knowledge that you have. If you're talking about pre-operational stage, make sure that they know that's what you're talking about, and use all of the keywords. That's all I can really say. It's just use the keywords, make sure you are using developmental language, because if you are not, then that's just, you can't assume that they know what you mean, even though they probably do. So another thing that I think is very important, at least it was very important to me while researching what hospitals I wanted to be at, is making sure that you fit in the culture is very important. And that goes the other way around as well. Like the people who are interviewing you are not only looking to see that you have the knowledge and that you have the experience and that, you're going to technically work well, but they are also looking to see if you fit into the culture that they have at their hospitals. So this is the time to let your personality shine, which I also talked about this in my episode 2 about the internship application, where, when they're asking, what about you, anything else I should know, and you need to let your personality shine in the application, you also need to let your personality shine in the interview. You want to sit there and you want to, if you think something's funny, laugh at it. If you're telling a story and you don't want to sound like a robot, you want to be animated with it. You want to show them who you are as a person and how you're going to be when you're in their program. And this also comes through because a lot of the time they ask, what do you do to relieve your stress? Do you have any hobbies? Like, go ahead and tell them that you make bracelets for the squirrel in your backyard. Like, that is something that is very much a personality trait that like some people are going to like and some people are not going to like. So, if you want to be yourself in the interview, you really should, because if the interviewer, I know this is hard to say because everybody wants to get an offer, but if the person who is interviewing you doesn't like your personality and isn't choosing you because of the way that you giggled or something, you probably don't want to be in that program anyways, because it's not going to be a good fit for you and who you are, and you wouldn't want to stifle your personality for an entire 4 months of working at this hospital. That's just going to make it hard for you to really get everything that you can out of that site. So while you're doing this, like, I was told during both of my mock interviews that they really enjoyed how much I really let myself shine. Like, I didn't, it helps you to not feel scared if you feel like you can be yourself, because they would ask, what is it? There was one question that I was asked where they said, what is play to child life or something? And I was like, play? That's the whole thing. And like, she was like, I loved how you did that because it really showed my whole personality, saying play, that's the whole thing. Like, play is, and then I went in and actually answered the question. But I really let my personality shine during that question. And I did the same thing when I was interviewing for the site that I ended up getting an offer from. I just remember me and the person who was interviewing me, like, we were going back and forth and hee-heeing and ha-haing because we're just girls and we're just having a good time and we're talking and we're passionate about the work that we do. And so I think that remembering to let your personality shine, I think, is more important, and something that maybe people are not thinking about as much because you're so worried about the technical part and you're so worried about the developmental part. And that's that. Be very confident in what you know. The last tip, which isn't really like a tip, but be confident. It's hard to do your best when you're doubting yourself. So making sure that you are taking your deep breath, making sure that you are, having your cheat sheets, you have all of your developmental knowledge, you're practicing in the mirror. I practiced my child life pitch in the mirror a billion times. I took videos of myself practicing my child life pitch just to make sure that, like, all of the technical stuff, I knew it was in my brain. I knew I had it. And it was just at that point being confident, which again, I think the personality thing helps with being confident, because when you're just being yourself, everything kind of just becomes natural. And you're not so much sitting there like, oh my God, I need to answer these questions. Like, you're just having a good time and you're talking, and it's just a good conversation about what you're passionate about. And the confidence is absolutely key, because you don't want them to, if you're doubting yourself, it can make other people doubt you as well. And you don't want them to doubt you just because you're feeling a little nervous. And feeling a little nervous is okay. But just remember that you got this. You know what you know, and you have the experience, and all you have to do is show it. And I think that's my last tip, honestly. Okay, so to end this video, because I don't have any more like real tips, I mean, please ask in the comments if you have any additional questions. I will definitely look and I will definitely answer, and let me know if you wanted to talk. Follow me on Instagram, text me on Instagram. This is my Instagram, __ Bria Alexis __ Please ask me questions. I love helping people. And I feel like people don't ever ask me questions and I want to be asked. But here are some questions just that I have been asked in both interviews and in my mock interviews, just so that you can get an idea of what questions are asked. And I'm just going to go through them and just say them. Tell me about your child life journey. Actually, I'm going to talk about it. First question, tell me about your child life journey. This is not only just about your schooling, but it's about your volunteering. It's about why you like child life, what interested you in it, and just talking about, like, I talked about how I started off as a pre-med student and how I saw that I wasn't taking any developmental classes. I was a youth development student and I was a pre-med student, and it was interesting to me that there was no overlap at all. All of my developmental classes were just for my youth development major, and all of my pre-med classes were just science. And I saw that there was a lack, and that's why I switched over. I talked about all of that in my child life journey. And then I also talked about, I'm getting a master's. Why am I getting a master's? Because I like schooling, and because I thought that, getting a master's would help me with my child life journey, because getting my master's was child life specific while getting my bachelor's was youth development specific. So talk about all of that. Okay. What type of supervisory style and team dynamic are most effective for your learning? So this is a very important question. Whoa. Okay, this is a very important question because you want to make sure they know how they can support you best. So for me, I like having a lot of freedom in my supervisory relationship. I don't want to be told exactly what to do. I like being able to figure out what works best for me. But I also like having a supervisor who is there for me for answering all of my questions, because I will have questions and I am not afraid to ask them. And I want my supervisor to know that they are going to get the questions and to be able to answer them, because I need that supervisory reflective supervision relationship where we are just talking about everything and we are going over what went wrong, what can change, what can be better, all of that. So I told them that. I was like, I don't need you to hold my hand every step of the way, but I do need you to be, I need you to have my back every step of the way, because I will be asking questions when I have them. And I don't want to be afraid to ask questions. I said that specifically. I told them, I said, I do not want to be afraid to ask questions. I do not want to feel like I am being annoying for having questions. And that's what they needed to know. So be answering that questions. This is what I want. One of the ones I talked about personality. What is your favorite thing to do in your free time? If you like to knit sweaters for squirrels, let them know. What toys or items would you bring to a typically developing 4-year-old in the hospital? So this is when you want to say, you're not just saying, oh, a 4-year-old is hyper, or a 4-year-old, they want independence. Like, yes, that is very important to say, but you want to talk about where the 4-year-old is in development. So not just say, oh, they want autonomy. What stage of development is that? What theorist tells you that they want autonomy? Like, work that into your answer. How would you prepare a 9-year-old for a procedure? Same thing. Sometimes I'll ask you, how would you do this with a 4-year-old versus a 9-year-old? And that's when you're really letting your develop. That's like a specific developmental question where you're letting them know, oh, well, a 4-year-old is in this stage and a 9-year-old is in this stage. And that's why this is different, because cognitively, make it work. I love a good DIY question. DIY, DEI question. This question, a family with a background different from you and supervisor is being treated on the unit. The CCLS with whom you're working begins interacting with them, and it's evident that their own beliefs are clouding their decisions. What do you do? This is a hard question to answer, and I think that it's okay to not know the answer, because when I talked about it, I said, I wouldn't say anything in front of the family, but I would try to have a conversation outside of the room. And I let them know, I said, it's definitely going to be an uncomfortable conversation for me, but I would ask them if they felt like, their biases were coming through, if they were aware of the way that they were talking to family is different. And I would also, if the CCLS, this is a good thing, if the CCLS is just a random CCLS you're with, you can also say, like, I would talk to my supervisor and like ask them what I could do about the situation. It's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to not know. It's okay to say, I've never been in a situation like this before, but this is what I think that I would do, And what are you hoping to gain from internship? This is kind of like everybody's going to give the same question or give the same answer. So I think that it's important for you to think about this before you have an interview, just so that you're maybe thinking about what about you and your experience specifically is going to be different from other people and what they want. Because for my answers for this, I think I usually was saying, I want to really be competent in multiple areas and not just come out wanting to be in one unit only, but feeling like I am competent to be in any unit that I get placed in for any reason. I also talked about wanting to have a longtime mentor coming out of this. And I think I talked about wanting to improve my medical terminology, because I took a medical terminology course, but I know that I can improve on that. So I wanted to get a better understanding of medical terminology, because I already do have a lot of understanding about development because I'm getting my master's. So the medical part is where I'm like, oh, I want to improve on that, which is something that's not very much child life. I mean, it's very child life adjacent. It's every child life specialist is basically using medical terminology all the time, but it's not like a specific goal of child life, if you catch my drift. And then in the end, I had a list of, I'm going to say 10 questions that I asked every single place that I interviewed at. And it was like the same questions, and I would just tweak it a little per each hospital that I interviewed. But most of them were just like, how would you describe the culture? What does your team do to support self-care? I asked if there were any educational opportunities that were provided, such as like conferences or classes or if a education stipend, because some hospitals will give a stipend for people to go and take classes outside of the hospital. I also said that I asked how they were going to facilitate closeness and I would say friendship between the interns, because all of the places that I was interviewing at had more than one intern. So I'm like, oh, how are you going to help us be friends? Because if I'm moving, I'm not going to have any friends, and I would like to be friends with the interns, but we're all going to be busy. So how are you going to help us be friends? I also asked, I think I asked about the area and said, what do you like to do in, I didn't apply for anywhere in Sacramento. So saying, what do you do around Sacramento for fun? Like, what would you suggest an intern get to know about the area? I think I also asked, like, what is the thing that interns are most likely to struggle with? Those are some of my questions. I don't know any other questions. I think I asked just general questions too about like, how do you handle sick days, PTO, like do you do makeup days, stuff like that, just because 4 months is a long time to not get sick. And some of the places I was applying to were also like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, so it's like a very long time to not get sick while also for most of them not getting paid. So asking questions about that was important to me too. Yeah, I can't remember any other questions I asked, but it's important to have a list of questions to ask because you want to just be prepared. Also, I didn't say this earlier, definitely do investigating about the hospitals that you're applying to, because they want to know that you're interested in their hospital. They know that you want an internship, of course, but they want to know why you want an internship there. So if you're saying, hey, I heard that you have a level 1 NICU or something like that, I don't know, just saying like, I love that you have specialists in the NICU, because not every hospital does. Or saying like, I love that you have animal assisted therapies, like you have dog handlers in your CCLS staff, or saying like, I see that you have a playroom on every floor. That's great. Just saying like specific things. Maybe it's, your level 1 trauma. I don't even know what that means. You have level 1 trauma center, or your ED, just talk about what you're interested in their hospital. And you could even say like, I see that you guys are very innovative, because some of the hospitals, they're teaching hospitals, or some of them are doing a lot of research, and just doing your research on the hospital and letting them know, this is specifically why I want to be at your hospital, this is why I think that this is a good fit for me. That's important. So yeah, I think that is going to be the end of this video. I feel like every time I do a child life diary, I think that I'm word vomiting. So if this is a little incoherent, ask questions in the comments, please, because I would love to answer them and, clear up some things that I said, because I know that it was probably a little confusing here and there. But yeah, this is very exciting. Right now, we are at the end of July, and I will be moving out of Chicago, boohoo, to go to my internship in the middle of August is when I leave, and my internship starts in September. So soon we'll get some more videos about how is internship going, what am I learning, stuff like that. It'll be a little bit difficult because of HIPAA and because I'm going to try. I am so sure people are going to be able to guess, and some people do know, so like don't say anything about it, but I'm going to try really hard to I just lost my train of thought. So I'm gonna try hard to like keep my videos about my experience and keep the hospital out of it, because my views are obviously separate from the views of the hospital that I will be interning at, and I don't want to have any identifying information about that. I just want to talk about me, my experience, what I'm learning, how it's going. So hopefully the Child Life Diaries will continue in a good and fashionable way, and hopefully you will enjoy watching it. So thank you, and see you next time.